Hello and welcome to the AgCulture Podcast, where we share insights about the future of agriculture. Each week, we dive into the stories, technology, and ideas shaping a profitable and sustainable future for farms and rural communities alike. I'm Paul Windemuller, host of the AgCulture Podcast, and today we're going to be talking to Annie Ridgely. Now, Annie's background is she has a dual degree in education and leadership from University of Northern Colorado. And through this journey in the macadamia nut farming sector, started in 2020, she has not only done commodity production of macadamia nuts, but she also started her own luxury skincare line from macadamia nut oil, which is pretty interesting as well. Now, I really enjoyed getting to know Annie in this interview. She has a very unique story about how she got into agriculture. And it actually started out, as you'll find out as we hit on it in the episode, she started her career in commercial fishing. So Annie is a native of Hawaii, and she farms there now, but she took a little bit of a turn of career and spent a while as a commercial fishing woman in Alaska. But today, Annie is a macadamia nut farmer in Hawaii. And I think she's got a really interesting perspective on how she got there. And also, it's a sector that I didn't really know a lot about, so I enjoyed getting to know about that. And it's another story of Hawaiian agriculture, a place where a lot of people don't think of big production agriculture anymore. It used to be such a robust agricultural industry there, and it had a very big sugarcane industry. And that has kind of changed over the years. And we had Will Lydgate from Lydgate Farms talk about the cacao industry in Hawaii. And now we have Annie coming on to talk about the macadamia nut industry in Hawaii. So as I said, I found this interview really interesting. There's a lot of interesting nuggets, unique aspects to Annie's story. And I think you're going to really enjoy this one. So without further ado, here's today's episode with Annie Ridgely. Well, welcome to the AgCulture Podcast, Annie. It's so good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited for our discussion and a deep dive into the macadamia nut industry. It's something I really don't know a whole lot about, so I'm really excited to learn. I've got some people that I've met in my journeys around the world that have been involved in it. But first, why don't you give us some background on yourself? And you're currently in Australia, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit, but your farm is in Hawaii, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. I have an 80-acre macadamia nut farm on the Big Island of Hawaii, and I've been farming since February of 2020. And prior to that, I actually commercially fished salmon in Alaska. So very similar to farming, but different. And I'm happy to talk about that. And then also I'm an educator by trade. And so as I started having a family and children, I have 4 children, I was able to privately educate them and incorporate them into this lifestyle of farming and ag and do that together. So that's just been a highlight of my life.
What drew you to macadamia nuts in particular? I mean, Hawaii is such a diverse island, group of islands. You can grow so much there. Why macadamians?
I grew up on Oahu. And so as I was parting from the commercial fishing industry, it was harder to have growing children on boats and doing that full time, if you can imagine. And it was, I knew I wanted to continue the lifestyle of living and working together and raising my children that way. And I wanted to get into agriculture, and I knew I wanted to get back to Hawaii. And I actually loved that I could grow anything here, right? Not void of challenges, but in concept and theory, you can grow just about anything. And there are some things that are more challenging than others, of course. but you can grow anything. And I thought I was actually going to be a coffee farmer. So and so I was had my mindset. I love coffee, and I was going to farm my own coffee. And then I fell upon this macadamia nut orchard in Pahala on the south side of the Big Island and completely fell in love with the community, the location. And I decided I was going to macadamia nut farm. And actually, interestingly enough, a lot of comments that I received were, you don't know anything about macadamia nut farming. What are you doing macadamia nut farming? And I, just said, I know how to work hard and I know how to learn, and it's going to be great. And it's definitely had its challenges, and there have been some steep learning curves. And ag is definitely, two steps forward, a couple steps back, sort of waltz all the time. But for the most part, it's been great.
What were some of the biggest challenges when you first took on the farm that you dealt with? Was it financial, or was it disease, learning how to deal with disease pressure? Was it just learning how to market?
Well, I had a lot of those skill sets down from commercial fishing. Very similar, right? You're acquiring this commodity. I'm not growing it, but I'm essentially farming the ocean of sorts. I was catching wild caught salmon, but it wasn't farm salmon, but it was very similar, and then selling it to a processor. So that whole process by which I was doing that seemed very similar. So that wasn't new. But when I moved to the Big Island, Hawaii in February 2020, in March, the pandemic shut everything down. So I had my 4 children. I'm on, at that time it was 23 acres of macadamia nut farm with 28 varieties of avocados, in addition in fruits and all other things. And so I was very happy to be there, but it was very challenging. The processors weren't wanting to buy any macadamia nuts because they had an inventory on the shelf, blockage there. And so it was very, I think, there were hundreds of macadamia nut farmers, different farmers that went out of business that year. And so that was challenging right away. The market was challenging. Just selling the crop was challenging. And then learning how to farm macadamia nuts. There wasn't as many resources. For example, there's this great resource at the University of Hawaii in Hilo. There's a huge ag program, it's an hour away. None of that was available, right? Just getting together with other farmers, which farmers do here in Hawaii, and they share best practices, which is completely different than commercial fishing. It's super competitive. There's only a certain amount of fish in the ocean, right? And you can't make more fish, right? So, but with farming, I always say, like, if we're all macadamia nut farming, we share best practices. We're making you do better as a farmer. Your piece of the pie is bigger. I do better as a farmer. My piece of the pie is bigger because the whole pie now is larger and more delicious, right? And so we're all doing better. And so we weren't able to do that during the pandemic. So that really wasn't happening much, right? A lot of that networking and sharing of best practices wasn't happening. But mostly it was, for me, so there was that isolation piece of like new farmer and not having any support, but which I'm passionate about now. But I'm sure I can talk more about that later, of supporting other farmers. But truly, it was like, okay, volcanic eruption, boom, right off the bat. It's like, what is happening? Earthquakes, which I was used to from Alaska, but still, that was pretty wild. Major flooding was happening, right? Oh, there's a hurricane. There was like a class something hurricane that happened. This is
All the first year you started.
all in the winter. Yeah, oh yeah, winter time, and all the ramifications that happen along with these issues. Right, it was all like major mother nature issues. And then right when I thought, okay, all right, we've got volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, flooding, like bring it on, drought. We had a drought. I was like, what? Okay, I'm good. I've experienced all these terrible things. What more can happen? And that's when we had this pack of wild dogs come on our property. And it's like a pack of wolves, of former hunting dogs. And then I thought, okay, you know what? I just don't, I just don't know what to do.
You can't make this stuff up, right?
No, you just can't make it up. You think, and people think, oh, you're going to Hawaii and you're farming, and it is, yeah, it is paradise, but it does come with a certain amount of challenges, like everywhere does. So,
wow, that's incredible way to start. Um, Before we get too much deeper into your specific operation, let's back up for those not versed in the macadamia industry, like myself. What is the life cycle? What's that look like for getting an orchard going? How long does it? How does harvest work? Is it multiple harvests a season? Is it one harvest? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
yeah, sure, I definitely will. Okay, so macadamia nut trees take 10 years to be in full production, and their lifespan can be up to 80 years old. They're still peaking at 40 years, 60 years, depending on how you care for them. There's different opinions based on that, but they'll generally live for about 80 years. So it's a huge investment that way. But of course, with grafting, we can graft, the type of macanut trees that we want onto a rootstock and get productive macanut trees in 4 or 5 years. In Hawaii, the harvest season is about 9 months. In other places in the world, they will actually spray chemicals on the trees to force the nut drop so that they have longer off harvest times to be able to take care of the trees and take care of their orchards. So in Hawaii, we don't have a lot of time for that orchard management, or historically haven't. And so we'll see a lot of unkept orchards for many reasons, but one of them is because we really have such a long harvest season. But what's happening is when the tree flowers, there's a chain of orchids of flowers that bloom, right? And that's happening with it's so beautiful. And that is actually happening when it's less than 63 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 consecutive days. The trees then start to bloom, to flower. So that can be happening kind of periodically throughout our winter season, right? And so where I'm located on the south side of the Big Island, because we have so many different climates, I think we have 11 out of the 13 zones of the world zones just right on the Big Island. So where I'm located, we have the flowering that's going to be happening is going to be happening January, February, December, January, February, right? And so then the pollination, and then the nuts are growing, and then I'm going to see them starting to fall July, August, September, November, October, November, December, January. So I'm harvesting, and then we have, I mean, I would love to start harvesting August 1, but then we have the processors, our major processors that are buying our nuts that are saying, we're not receiving nuts until such and such. They might say, we haven't gotten the word yet, even this year. I've been in touch with, I'm one of the largest independent growers, like single, non-company owned growers. And so I'm communicating with the processors and saying, well, because then I work backwards. When am I going to start harvesting, right? And which there's so many things that then you work backwards from the harvest date to get ready for harvest, right? And they don't even know when they're going to start receiving nuts. So that changes on any given year of when we're starting harvest. And then depending on the labor, we still are dependent on manual labor in Hawaii. We're about, let's just say decades, maybe half a century behind the rest of the world. We might as well be a third world country as far as agriculture goes.
Just from a mechanization standpoint?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're hand harvesting. So depending on the labor shortage or not, then we're harvesting, even though the nut drop is happening January, February, we're maybe harvesting all the way through March, April. And there might still be nuts on the ground in a big orchard like mine, depending on the labor shortage or not. And then the processors say, what? We're shutting down. One, they may actually need to shut down because they need to do all their maintenance on their equipment, right? Their facility equipment. Or they have their own orchards and they're like, whoa, we are plugged and we need to process our own fields and we need to shut down from external receiving of these nuts and process our own. So yeah, so then we kind of have an off season, we call it, maybe from May to August.
And is there certain processing that you have to do on farm, like drying or anything like that, before you bring it to your main processor, or is that all done at the processor that you work with?
That is up to the choice of the grower. Okay, so the macadamia nut, I don't know if you know, but when it's ripe, well, let's just say ready, ripe, whatever, it will actually fall from the tree. So the macadamia nuts are harvested off of the ground. Okay, and so the husk is attached around the nut, and then there's a nut inside the shell, right? If I was in Hawaii, I would be showing you. Well, I guess we're in Bundaberg, but I don't have any macadamia nuts here. So then there's you take the husk off, right? And then there's a nut in the shell. And then there's 300 psi inside of that nut is a kernel. So I can have 500 pounds of nut with husk around it, right? And then I dehusk that and I'll have maybe 100 pounds of NIS, nut and shell. And then I crack sort that. And then I might have 30, 20 pounds of kernel recovery from that.
So 5% of the total weight that you harvested out of your orchard.
Yeah. Well, and it varies because I said 500 pounds to 100, but that could be if I have nut and husk that's wet or something. So yeah. So it everywhere else in the world, the grower is required to husk their nut because then it's a better quality nut that then shows up at the processor. And that's some of the things that, that we're working on in Hawaii so that there's a better quality nut that then goes to the processor so that we get paid a higher quality amount, right? So, but truly, a grower can pick the nuts out of the field, have the husk on them, and just sell that nut and husk. So we can sell nut and husk, or we can sell nut and shell.
That makes sense. And that processor that you're working with, there's not really cooperatives or anything like that in the macadamia industry in Hawaii, correct?
Really, a cooperative wouldn't really work. We actually need a consortium, and we've done a lot of work at that of trying to create a consortium, which the difference is that then the growers would be the actual investors that would own the infrastructure.
And what type of products specific to the Hawaiian market are you guys making out of it? Is it all pretty much fresh nut, or is it going into oil, or what are you using it for?
Okay, so in Hawaii, this is also actually interesting for our industry for macadamia nuts in general. So, macadamia nuts are not from Hawaii. Macadamia nuts are from Australia. They're a wild tree in Australia, but Hawaii actually started cultivating them maybe first, right? Because sugarcane left, we had all this ag land, and then we planted macadamia nuts there, and they grew really well, right? For many reasons. I can go on about that. But what Hawaii has is we have the stronghold on the market because everybody thinks when you hear macadamia nut, you think that they're from Hawaii, right? You just think they're from Hawaii. Actually, in China, they call macadamia nuts the Hawaii nut.
Oh, really?
They're like, oh, the Hawaii nut, right? Oh, yeah. Even though Australia,
kind of like the Chinese gooseberry, everyone calls a kiwi, right?
Yeah, right. And in Spain, they're doing macadamia nuts incredibly well. They're South Africa, China's growing macadamia nut orchards. But Hawaii has the stronghold on the market. And so in that, what you see is that whenever anybody comes to Hawaii, it's truly unique. It's truly a unique consumer experience for us because they're buying the chocolate covered macadamia nuts or the roasted macadamia nuts or some sort of macadamia nut product that is a gift item that they are then going to take back. And it's great. I'm not complaining because they're buying incredible amounts of that. And because we have the stronghold of the market, we can sell incredible amounts of Hawaii macadamia nuts like that all over the world. We even sell them into Australia. Chocolate covered Hawaiian macadamia nuts. Oh yeah. So that's great. But what's not happening is we're not like an almond where on your grocery list and on my grocery list every month and on other people's grocery lists every month, there is not macadamia nuts, right? Right? It's not a walnut or an almond that way, where this is something that we're regularly consuming and buying. And so, yeah, it's different.
What are some of the other uses? I've seen macadamia nut oil in different places. Is that a new product line that's come out recently, or is that kind of a...
Yeah, I really appreciate this because I actually make macadamia nut oil. I didn't know if you know that.
Oh, I
I
didn't
actually,
see that.
oh, okay,
Okay.
okay, yeah. I actually make a cold pressed macadamia nut oil because all this research came out about the use of it in cosmetics being a superior oil, better than vitamin E, grapeseed oil, all the tremendous oils of the world for your skin, coconut oil. So when the pandemic happened and all the processors shut down, well, actually, when the very first transaction happened between me and the processor, and I got the ticket that was like a carbon copy ticket, right? There was a white and a pink and a yellow. It's like, oh, wow, it's just like commercial fishing with the tender and the processor and weighing the fish that I did for 20 years. And my heart kind of sank. It was a little bit of a gut punch. And I thought, "Oh, I cannot be slave to the processor like this anymore." I mean, and we work so hard to develop cooperatives and markets and, all kinds of things to not have that happen to the commercial fishing industry there. But that transaction happened, and I started thinking, like, what can I do to be liberated from the processor? How can I create the vertical integration of my own business, right? And then what happened was the processor says, sorry, we're not receiving any more nuts from anybody. And I had all this harvest on the ground, and I had people that were employed by me to harvest the crop, right? And so that's when I created, well, I I purchased a cold press oil machine from Germany, and I started cold pressing macadamia nuts to make an oil. Because there are a lot of other products on the market, and there are a lot of other products require commercial kitchens, FDA approval. They're, a little bit more complicated because of that, edible component and other things, and they're already made. But like one of the interesting ones is macadamia nut cheese, right? It's like a vegan cheese, and it's really good. I mean, think of hummus,
Is that out of
mac
the
nuts.
product? Are you cold pressing it and then using that?
No, I'm just talking about something totally separate. Okay,
Okay.
the cold pressed oil, the leftover from that, well, there's two presses that happen, and the first press is what we like to call a meal cake, and that meal cake can be, if it's not done through a commercial kitchen, that meal cake is incredible for any kind of livestock or animal feed, particularly chickens, because it's high protein. And that, I don't know where it's like other places in the world, but that high protein chicken feed in Hawaii, to get it shipped to Hawaii, is so expensive, right? And we just want some eggs. So, but yeah, so it's incredible. A lot of people mix their own feed, right? And so it's just an incredible component for that. And then when you press it again a second time, because mac nuts have so much oil, it needs to be pressed twice. The second time, it's so dry and powdery that we've actually made a macadamia nut flour out of that. So now we press in a commercial kitchen, even though all our oil is reserved for a cosmetic line called Shine Naturally. I'll send you some so we can get some for your wife. And
She'd love it.
yeah, and so and we don't grow, manufacture, and distribute all from our farm, but we do the pressing in a commercial kitchen now so that we can use the flour as the byproduct, and then we have a gluten-free, high-protein flour. So that's what we're doing now. A lot of other products on the market, and interestingly enough, that I just want to say about this flour, you would think, oh, that's great. No, the average consumer is not going to the store or on their shopping list and they're getting a gluten-free flour in addition to maybe the almond flour or the coconut flour that they already work with. But it's very similar to like an almond flour when you're baking or cooking. And so really it's created this whole other like need for a product that people are actually going to buy from Hawaii. Like maybe a pancake mix, pre-made pancake mix something like that they're going to actually buy and take home or give away as a gift. So, but yeah, so we have this high protein flour, and but other things that can be done with macadamia nuts besides all the creative ways that they roast them and flavor them, and candy them. And I say candy, it's the chocolate covered macadamia nuts, or the mele macs, which are rolled like, have the chocolate perfectly around them. Those are all using the number one kernels, right? The whole kernels. But when you crack, however amount of macadamia nuts, and then there's a sorting process that happens. And then the mac nuts are graded based on if it's a whole large kernel all the way down to bits and tiny pieces, right? And so you're like, how can I utilize all of this? My number one kernels, those are absolutely what you're going to see when you get roasted macadamia nuts, because you're pulling that out of the bag and you don't want to see pieces, halves, quarters of macadamia nuts, right? And if the bag is transparent, you can look in. When you think macadamia nuts, you're not thinking little pieces and halves and whatever, right? You want a nut that you pull out like an almond that's whole, right? So those are number ones. And so that's your most expensive nut. But then you have baking pieces, right? People make macadamia nut butter and take the smaller pieces and uh,
Kind of like peanut butter.
blend it like peanut butter. Yeah, macadamia nut butter, delicious, like a peanut butter. Yep, thanks for that. But macadamia nut cheese is interesting to me because I always had goats and did goat cheese, and so I love the idea of macadamia nut cheese. So that's kind of a new on the market product. And globally, we share newsletters, and are sharing products and kind of what's working in other places of the world and what people are trying. Essentially, there's always emerging new products, and yeah, it's fun to see what other people are doing, and it's great to see what people are doing globally and what's sticking and what's not. But with health conscious consumers, I think that macadamia nuts really have a future.
Yeah, and I think it's really impressive how you took a challenge that you were faced with right off the bat in your farming journey, and found a new market because of your back was kind of against the wall, and now you said you've got your own line of cosmetics specifically with that. So that's really really cool to see how out of a challenge that you're facing, you basically started a new business out of that. I love those stories.
Yeah, absolutely have. And I think it's really important for farmers to do that because less than 2% of the United States are in ag, right? I mean, we could say 1.7, okay? Let's just say 1.7 of us are in agriculture. And and even less than that, a fraction of that are women, right? I'm just going to put a plug in there. I just want to say that. But there is a really small percentage of us that are farming and ag. And why is that? We can talk about this all day, and I'd love to continue that conversation. But essentially, it's the worst business to be in financially. We are buying everything retail and we are selling everything wholesale. I mean, and I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and it is the lifestyle. It is the lifestyle is why we do this. That's rich, right? That we get to go outside every morning and live where we live, that we get to have these connections with the seasons and the weather and the earth and our family, like that, and our food, right? That's rich. That's priceless. But as far as like a business model, it is the worst business to be in. Okay. So I think it's super important that every farmer create what I call vertical integration, right, within their farm. I don't care if you have an S corp or an LLC or how you're operating in business. Create also a value added product. And there's a lot of grants out there to help us do that.
Were you able to access some of those type of resources when you first started in down that path, or what did that look like for you when you first got into that?
It takes a while. I just was like ready, fire, aim, right? I knew I needed to do something. I just started rolling, and then I'm starting to press. I have nuts, and I'm drying. I don't know what I'm doing, and I learned best that way. I always have, so I'm comfortable with that. But I think that as I've adapted to what I'm doing and figured out what I'm doing, and everything's evolved. It's hard to write a grant when you're not really quite sure how to articulate what you're doing and where you want to go.
Right.
So it's you really need somewhat of a clear vision to be able to do that.
And is at that time you felt like, hey, this is just an idea, but I don't really have a clear vision long term where I want to take this. This is just an idea I'm going to act on today.
Yeah, I was like, well, I know I was interested in. I knew I needed a value added product. I knew I needed to do something with the crop. I knew I needed liberation from the processor, and I didn't know how. And I didn't want to do Mackinac milk. You heard my opinion about Macadamia milk.
Not your passion.
Yeah, and I was interested in cheese. I wasn't sure, refrigeration, all kinds of things, storage, shelf life, all that. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that, but I knew I needed to do something. And I thought about oil, and then I looked, and all the emerging research was about macadamia nut oil and just being a superior oil. And I've always been a huge proponent about for people feeling comfortable in their own skin. And these false narratives of beauty standards that are impressed on women and men, and I thought, wow, I could create an actual natural beauty product from what I'm doing already, and I felt really passionate about doing so. So that's sort of where Shine Naturally was created. And so by the time I was actually pressing nuts, though, I want to say we're in 2021 or 2022. Okay.
Okay. So you had them stored up and you started pressing after that.
Yeah. So we're like, and then just trying to survive, and then trying to sell some nuts, have this working capital, right? All this is happening, but, and learning and failing, lots of failing. But then, yeah, it's just not a linear trajectory, right? Like, just then now I have cold press oil. Now what, right? Like, I didn't do a feasibility study of like what, cosmetic oil and where I'm going to sell it and how I'm going to do that. And, like last week, I get this contract to grow ghost peppers. It's because the company approached me and was like, hey, we want X amount of ghost peppers. We'll pay you X amount of money. Like, the market's already established. I think that's a great way for farmers to make money. If you already have this established market, like, they're going to buy it guaranteed. Here we go. We can kind of even sign a letter of intent, sort of a loose, non-binding letter of intent of sorts, not necessarily a contract, because what if I have a pest issue or something, or whatever the weather, right?
Wild dogs come back and dig them up.
Yeah, wild dogs want the ghost peppers. Like, you don't know, like the devil dogs. I don't know. They're just very wolf-like. But yeah, so I think, yeah, then there's that learning and trying to figure out what are the markets, and that's where I talk about kind of evolving and solidifying. And if you asked me in 2020 to write a grant for a value-added product, I really didn't know what I was doing.
Now, you talked about knowledge sharing and kind of your passion for that. And I think that's probably one of the reasons you're currently in Australia,
Yes.
in Bundaberg, Australia.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your interactions with other producers in the industry, and what roles you play in the sector level globally.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, I was invited to the Global Leadership Conference for macadamia nuts, and that happened in South Africa. I wasn't able to make that. That was right in the middle of the harvest and homeschool and all kinds of things. But I'm in touch with those leaders. I hosted Jillian Lang. She came over from the World Macadamia Nut Organization, I want to say like 3 months ago, to Hawaii, and took her around. I just want to distinguish between growers and processors. So you're calling me like a processor of macadamia nuts, but I'm not. I mean, I do process my own and make the cold press. I guess I am a processor.
Yeah, I would consider that farmer processor.
Okay, yeah. Grow, manufacture, and distribute. Okay.
Give yourself a little more credit.
Okay, well, thank you. We have some major processors in the state that are then purchasing the macadamia nuts from the growers, right? I mean, I could talk about coffee a little bit, but So the coffee industry in Hawaii is super successful, and the prices that the growers get are very high. And the reason is because about 20 years ago, before 20 years, before that, people were selling any kind coffee from anywhere in the world that they got for any amount of money that was processed anyway. And they were bringing it to Hawaii and then labeling it as Hawaii coffee, Kona coffee, right? And so the coffee growers all got together and they said, you know what, we're gonna push for some labeling laws. And so now you'll see when you buy Kona coffee, it'll say 10% Kona coffee, 100% Kona coffee, right? And then there'll be a price differentiation. You might have a $5 bag, 1 pound bag of coffee that's 10% Kona coffee, or you can have an $86 bag for a pound of 100%, roasted Maui specialty coffee or something, right? So, um, and I believe that there's room for everyone at the table. Right now, we have a 10% Kona coffee that has this huge market in Walmart. And then we have this 100% coffee, Kona coffee or specialty grown coffee that has another market, right? Has another luxury market or something. So it's made room for everyone at the table, has protected the growers and has protected the brand and protected the industry. So macadamia nuts, we don't have that yet. And so we had a large processor or some large processors. It's twofold. Threefold is complicated, but we have some large processors that the have a monopoly here in Hawaii, where then they purchase some other processors, right? So now they're like
Yep. So
the
they're the only
monopoly.
ones in town.
And they buy macadamia nuts from Malawi, South Africa, China, right? And they're not as high quality as Hawaiʻi macadamia nuts. And they're buying them for dirt cheap. There's child slave labor in Malawi, Kenya, right? And they're bringing it to Hawaii and California and they're labeling it as Hawaiʻi macadamia nuts and selling it for $20 a pound. Wow, I love that profit margin I'm a capitalist. I believe in our opportunity to expand our profit margin, right? But what that's doing is then the Hawaii growers are saying, well, what about us? We want X amount of money for our crop, and it's so expensive to grow macadamia nuts in Hawaii because land is so finite and valuable in
And
Hawaii.
labor.
And labor, yeah, labor. We're like U.S. labor cost, right? And labor, and we are, and we just don't have as great of ag practices. One of the reasons why I'm here in Bundaberg, we just don't have a standard of quality nuts because Hawaii growers have gotten away with selling bad quality nuts to maybe desperate processors before in the past that really want Hawaiʻi macadamia nuts. And so we're going to the processors as a group and we're saying we want a higher price for our nuts or we can't afford to farm. And the processors are like, well, you don't give us a high quality of nuts. We're certainly not going to pay that. And besides, we can just get them for free or close to free over here in Malawi, right?
So they're building that value, that extravagant value in the U.S. market, based off of people's perception of Hawaii, people's perception of quality in the Hawaiian production of macadamia nuts. But they're the ones taking that value and not actually giving the consumer what they think they're getting. That makes a lot of sense to be able to kind of strong arm them and say, okay, look here, we gotta take a different angle at this. This doesn't work for either party.
Yeah, and we tried federally, like how are those import laws? And I'm not exactly the right person to quote all of the laws, but there's so many loopholes in importing the raw product, right? Or so we can bring in the nut and shell and then do everything else here and then call that Hawaiʻi Macadamia Nut and
because it was processed in Hawaii.
Yes. Yeah. And what constitutes processed? That, well, just for me to take my nut and make oil, I'm handling it or paying somebody to process it 11 times. So we have like 11 loopholes now of what the processed nut looks like. And we can purchase that. But anyway, there was a $38 million recall that happened because there are not quality standards, in other places of the world that there are here that growers are held to. But what I feel most passionate about in my small little sector niche of agriculture is how can we, and I've said it before, make everybody's piece of the pie better quality and larger so that the whole pie and our whole Hawaiian industry pie is larger and we all win. But we need to have a grower's toolkit of sorts and we need to educate growers and we need to hold growers to a higher standard, right? I don't know if it's like this. And I mean, we have small operations of growers that are selling to the processors, right? And they're still in business. And everywhere else in the world, like all those little tiny farms all got bought up by that one big farmer, right? And then that one farmer can do his best practices in that whole area, right? We have growers that have 10 trees in their backyard. We have growers that have 3 acres, 10 acres, 5 acres, 20 acres, right? We have growers of all different sizes. And, just educating them and getting a consistent quality of macadamia nuts that are going to the processors. So then we as growers can say, no, we want a high quality price for our nuts because we're providing you a high quality nut.
Yeah. But right now they just don't have that incentive.
No.
The processor's not giving them that incentive. So again, going back to capitalism, I guess you call it transparent capitalism, right?
Yes. Yeah. So what's happened is, not having to reinvent the wheel because of what I told you with coffee, how can we put some pressure on the processors, which may or may not be the best thing to do because I am dependent on the processor to some degree, right?
Yeah, you don't want to see them go out of business, but you do want to take some of that profit margin back and actually give the consumer a transparent product of what they think they're getting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's so nice the way you say that. But yes, that is. I really want that, and I really want to see those labeling laws. I don't want, coffee's still in litigation, and it's been 18 years. And they're still in litigation. And I don't want to see any of that happen. I don't want to see too much pressure on processors. I believe there's room for everybody at the table and that'll shift out and sort out. But I do want to see that growers, we had 65 growers go out of business last year, small growers, right? When the monopoly happened and a big processor was like, well, we're just not going to buy any more Hawaiian grown macadamia nuts. And there's other processors, and people were able to find them if you had that relationship and if you had high quality nuts, right? So in Australia, this is interesting, right? In Australia, the government funds organizations to educate, support, and help growers grow. They also fund, this organization also will do like consultation. They will test the nuts. So now the growers can say, okay, I've been working with the organization. They've tested my nuts. Here is the quality of my nuts over the past year. You should buy from us. Right? So now they're already up to a certain standard. They have these reports that have been done. They have sort of this credibility that they've worked with this consultation to some degree. And so now they're up to this standard. And then they go to the processors and say, we want to be one of your new clients, customers. So,
and is that a checkoff program that the industry ends up indirectly funding through a government organization, or is that specifically funded by the government there?
Specifically funded by the government in Australia, yes.
Okay.
But I think it could be through a processor, a checkoff, from a processor or something in Hawaii. I think that could happen.
Yeah, lots of opportunity out there, isn't there?
And no time, right?
That's right. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I really appreciate, Annie, having you on the podcast and talking to us about what it's like to farm in Hawaii, what it's like to farm macadamia nuts, and some of the challenges that you're facing. I think that's really interesting and good to look at, no matter what sector of agriculture somebody's in, to try and identify, like you said, from the coffee industry, you could identify a potential solution for yours. So that's why I do this podcast, is to be able to share information from all over the world in different sectors and different geographies to hopefully stimulate some ideas and cultivate connections that way.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I just want to make myself available if anybody wants to reach out at any time and talk stories some more, or share ideas and collaborate best practices, or if somebody has some solutions or things that they want to share, I would love that.
Yeah, we'll definitely put a link to your social media in our show notes, so that way people can get a hold of you and
sounds great.
Find out more about you if they want to contact you. So
okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great to have you today.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, happy farming.
Thank you once again for listening to today's episode with Annie Ridgely. I hope you really enjoyed her unique story that she had to share with us today. And I hope you learned a little bit about the macadamia nut sector. I know I did. So that was really cool. Check out Annie's links that we put in the show notes to her skincare line. Check that out, see what she's doing there. Also, you can reach out to her on the social media that we have linked as well in the show notes. And if you have a really unique story of somebody you know like Annie, whether that be in macadamia nut sector or some other sector, if they have a unique story, we'd love to hear about it and love to share that here on the AgCulture Podcast. So please contact us. You can reach out to me. Usually LinkedIn's the best way to do that, or you can shoot us an email. Check that out as well in the show notes. As always, I really appreciate you sharing our episodes with people that you know that would also benefit from them as well. So if you would be so kind as to do that, we really appreciate it. Till next week, I'm Paul Windemuller, and you have been listening to the AgCulture Podcast. Have a great week.